komt daar weer een keer voor Jan Hellers. En Jan Hellers steekt voor een voor. Jan Hellers terug met 2. En met Jan Hellers komt die bal. En dan komt Sadie. En hij komt.
As sy, dinsdag aand, ons is hier, die Bokke wen nog al die pad en dit is lekker. Ryan, hoe gaan dit met jou?
Lekker Kappie man, lekker. Ons het 'n bietjie van 'n scare gehad vanaand, maar ons bly om op die lug te wees en natuurlik soos ouer gewoonte weer rugby te praat al doen ons dinge so klein bietjie anders te vanaand.
Ja, Jessie, asseblief, as jy enige iemand kyk wat agter hier was en nie meer is nie, vra asseblief hulle om terug te kom. Ons het tegniese probleme gehad van die mense wat ons platform beheer, so dit is regtig buite ons beheer. Ons is nou nie as prins laat gewees of enige iets nie. Ons is soos afkoop hoeders hier agter die skerms rondgehardloop en hulle het ons daarom, jy weet, gered. So ons is hierso en asseblief as julle weet van enige iemand wat gereeld kyk of nog nooit gekyk het nie, nooi hulle. Ons gaan vanaand nooi sommer die Engelse mense, want tonight we are going English. We've got a distinguished guest, if we're going to go that route, all the way from England, although he is a Kiwi, and his name is Dave. I'm not going to try and say your surname because I might just say it wrong and people might laugh at me. But Dave, who basically, I'm not going to try and say everything, but you run the whole Raeburn Skuld thing, which we are going to discuss tonight, amongst other things. And of course, we are going to speak about what happened over the weekend with some of the matches. And we're obviously going to just have a sneak peek about the big one that's coming this weekend. And before we get underway, I just want to say that for those that don't know what the Raeburn Skuld is, I'm going to put it up. And then Dave, just now I want you to explain to us what the whole design is. But before that, we'll obviously get to who you are. But just a sneak peek to everybody that wants to know. This is the Raeburn Skuld. Sorry for me saying cup. I don't know why I'm doing that. Humble apologies. But that is what it looks like. And tonight we're going to find out more about this. Call it silverware for a better word of terms. Anyway, Dave, welcome to the show. It's normally an Afrikaans show, but we are very privileged to have you on here tonight. And I want you to start by telling us who you are, where you're from. I mean, I told everybody you live in England, but you're Kiwi. So how does that happen?
No. Thank you for having me. Yeah, do you know what? I actually live about 10 minutes walk away from Twickenham Stadium now, so it's not a bad place to end up as a Kiwi. It's nice to be able to do that. I mean, I'm Dave, and I originally come from the South Island of New Zealand. I've been over here now for closing in on 20-odd years, but I've always lived around the Twickenham area. But just a regular fella, family man, who believes that World Rugby would be enhanced by something like the Raeburn Skuld and the Utrecht Shield in the women's game. And let me jump straight into telling you what it is, because I think that helps. So the first ever international rugby match was in 1871 between England and Scotland. It was played in Edinburgh at Raeburn Place. Scotland won. And so then you just go, what if it was like a boxing title? What if you take it and whoever beats you takes it off you, and whoever beats them takes it off them, and you carried that on from 1871 until today? Well, if you did that, you'd have the Raeburn Skuld. And it's traced from that first match in 1871 until today. And the Springboks now hold it. They took it off of Scotland. Scotland took it off of Australia. And Australia took it off of you in the Rugby Championship. And so it's like a travelling trophy. But you guys can legitimately claim right now to be at the end of a line of winners since the birth of international rugby. So yes, you're World Cup holder.
Dave, I'm just glad this whole thing is your concept, because I think it would have sounded like the South Africans are just trying to add some more trophies to the cabinet at this stage.
Well, let me be honest with you, Hein. So this came up in about 2008, and it was kind of on a message board that we were all talking about it. Bunch of Kiwis. We were all a bit sad about how things had gone in 2007. We were like, there must be a better way. There has to be a better way. So the truth is, it all came from a bit of butthurt. We were all a bit upset that we'd missed out. But, as we looked at it and you kind of name it after, you're like, well, actually, it's a legitimate thing. So it's not a real shield right now that doesn't physically exist. It's just a model that I've created. But what it tracks is very real. So actually we have full data going right the way back to 1871 tracing all those teams. And the box, whether the Shield physically exists or not, they can claim that lineage. They can claim to be at the end of a line of winners. But they've got to defend it now, and it's very hard to defend. So, England are going to be coming for you.
And I mean, Dave, I suppose the good thing about this thing is that it pretty much takes away the idea of a dead rub as long as the champion is involved. It's whether we play. Obviously, I don't know if we were the holders there, but we could have been losing it to Japan, and Japan could have been the holders of the cup at that or the Shield at that stage. So it's completely active all the time.
Yeah.
So while you might be rotating or resting players in a specific game, it's anyone can have a go and think that they could be the holders of the title at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, imagine. So, for instance, the All Blacks right now haven't held it since 2017. In fact, they haven't even had a challenge for it since 2018. So if I'm an All Black player and I knew about this and it was, well known, when I finally got a chance at it, I'd be like, shit, man, I need this, because you don't know. If you might only be in the team for 2-3 years, if you don't get a shot at it, you just miss out, and so it builds up that kind of excitement and that piece that comes through. And then you've got the awesomeness of, Japan having held it, and you go right back, like 1999, Samoa won it, took it off. And even if you go to the mid-'80s, Romania held it in 1985. And who would have thought that Romania held a world title? Just wouldn't have guessed it, but they did. And so that's where it gets really fun. And I had somebody on Twitter, our Twitter account's been quite active recently, and there was a Scotsman who was like, I'm supporting England next weekend. And he was like, because if they win, then they take the Raeburn Skuld into the Six Nations and their first match is against Scotland. So, and that's the beauty. That's what I love about it, is that it gives you investment in other games because you're like, how the hell can I get back? So I'll be honest, I was really, really hoping that you guys would keep it through the Rugby Championship. I was a bit disappointed when you lost to the Australians because I was convinced we'd take it off you. Didn't quite work out that way. And we would have lost it to you in the second game anyway, so it's... And it's that thing of giving you investment in other games. As you say, no dead rubbers, and it's like, what's coming?
So, Dave, just that means you and everyone in New Zealand should be fully behind the box this weekend.
Well, yeah, to be fair, it gives us our next chance. I'm really conflicted now. So, there's also the Utrecht Shield, which follows the same thing in the women's game. Remarkably, the first women's international was only in 1982. Played in Utrecht between France and the Netherlands. Exactly the same concept, traces it in the women's game. Now, the Black Ferns held that earlier this year, but England took it off them because they smashed them in the last couple of games. And I was sat there as a Kiwi going, I love the Black Ferns winning, but it's kind of good England getting it because it means that it's going to be played for a lot more. And I have the same thing here where I'm like, I'd quite like the Box to keep it so New Zealand get a shot. But as the person who's trying to make the Raeburn Skuld happen, it'd be quite good if it was being played for in the Six Nations. So I'll be very honest with you, lads. I'm a bit conflicted. I'd quite like to see it in the Six Nations next year. I wouldn't lie to you,
Well, I suppose, there's a lot of just in what you're saying there, because at the end of the day, if the Box do take it this weekend, it's going to be a long time before it's up for grabs again. So, I think we all understand it. Looking at some of the comments, it is building momentum among the fans. Yeah. Which is really great, and I think, Dave, like I said just now, I'm going to put this shield on the screen, and I want you to take us through the design of it.
Yeah, absolutely,
so that people can understand. I went to your website, which I'm happy for you to share at any time, and people can go read up about the Utrecht Shield as well, which is obviously the ladies' version of this. But just for all purposes tonight, I've got images of the Raeburn Skuld just from different angles, and I just want you to obviously explain to us. And at some stage, I've also got that video of yours that shows over the years since 1871, who's won it and how it's changed hands, which is actually a very cool video.
I did enjoy putting that together. Yeah, so so this is the 3D model. This was just in my head, and I went away and I found somebody who could make it for me. And if you see, each one of those badges would have the details of a Raeburn Skuld run on it. So, for instance, through the Rugby World Cup, Springboks won it. They actually held it for 5 games in that run before they lost it to the Wallabies. So the third to last badge, if you like, on the outside would have had the details of that run. And so each time it gets added to, and the shield just grows with it. So if you ever see, so for instance, I've got a mug that's got the Utrecht shield on it. It's smaller because there's been less games in the women's game. And so the nice thing of it is, what I'd love to do is get that central piece of wood to be from Raeburn Place in Edinburgh, so that the heart of the shield, kind of links in with the location of that first game and where we're named after. But the idea is that we'd make it. I've been half thinking about trying to make it myself with a woodworker somewhere around London. It was a bit expensive when I had a look at how to make it with one of the professionals. And to be clear, there's no big corporate or anything like this behind it. There's just me, my very understanding wife, and I kind of give it the devotion that I think it requires. I mean, to be fair, my children are growing up with it. So the Raeburn Shield's been around a lot longer for me than they have. My son was helping me on the weekend as I was at the England women versus Canada women for the Utrecht Shield. And in fact, we had one of these. So this is as close as we have to a real shield. It is just a piece of foam. But, it was a start. And we've got lots of pictures of the team with it because England currently hold that Utrecht Shield. And my son was very busy giving out stickers for it and tracking down all the ladies. It was quite impressive.
Yeah,
but
some of those.
The way I'm approaching this is we just got to get fans in. We're going to get the fans following it, and World Rugby will follow. I'm not going to chase World Rugby at this point. Let's focus on what matters, which is fans and players enjoying rugby.
Very true. Dave, just a question that I have about the Raeburn Shield itself. How big would it be in measurement, if I can ask that? I don't know. Have you thought of that?
Yeah. So the Raeburn Shield would be about 60 centimeters. So it'd be about that. It's quite solid. And then the idea is that with those concentric circles, you just add another layer every time you need to do it. So actually, they're quite big now. So at the rate of the way it's changing hands, it's probably about 50 to 70 years before we'd need to add another layer after the next one. But then you start to get into some massive shield if we go, as it goes on. But I mean, the Stanley Cup and the ice hockey's had to deal with that. It just gets taller and taller. So we'll figure it out. And I'd like to think we're just as prestigious as the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at that, I don't know what the name is, so my humblest apologies. But the trophy or whatever they call it, with they play for in France. I mean, that big shield as well, or that whatever they call it. I mean, that thing. Or are you
thinking of the Ramfurly Shield in New Zealand? There's the Ramfurly Shield, which New Zealanders are quite familiar with this kind of concept because in our provincial game in New Zealand, we've got something called the Ramfurly Shield. And that is a defender challenge, just the same, but you only defend it when you're at home. Whereas the Raeburn Shield's a bit different. Once you hold it, you just have to defend it every match you play in, which makes it so hard. I mean, the team that have held it for the most games in a row is New Zealand. They did it for 17 matches in a row in the kind of early 90s. The team that's held it for the longest period of time is the Springboks. You held it for 16 years. From 1937 through to 1953.
Wow.
Small matter of a world war in there, which might have. Though I've got to say, I worry when you guys win.
No, man, don't worry. You must be happy for us. I mean,
no. I worry. World War I happened while you had it. World War II happened while you had it, and then we had a pandemic in 2020 when you had it. Now that you've won it again, I'm wondering what comes next.
Well, I'm happy. If I have to decide between pandemics and world wars, then yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one, but I would rather stay clear of world wars at this stage of the game. But if it's okay with you guys, I just want to show you this video. Obviously, Dave, you made the video and you said it was quite painful to make. But I mean, just for the viewers' sake, I mean, just to see. And there you can actually see that long time which the Springboks had it, and also ultimately, the All Blacks and stuff. But I mean, this is quite. I mean, I think we've all seen a similar graph to this before. Let me just put it on here. So I mean, yeah, obviously Scotland were the first winners, and then, as you see, the years change, and it's quite fun watching this. Just to see how it changes. I mean, England dominated for quite a long time. You know,
Yeah, I mean, Scotland is still pretty strong at this point. And it was 06 when you
to play.
That's when you guys pop in.
And then the Boks arrived.
Much earlier than us. We didn't hit it until the 1920s. There we go.
Yeah. And then the enemy arrived. Oh, goodness.
You're probably going to catch up
Australia
now.
arrived with a bang.
Well, and you start slowly climbing as well.
Yeah. And I mean, then domination came into play. World domination. As you can see, the green line just grows and grows. Like any true South African would love to see.
You want to pause it.
And
I
then
think
Andy,
about
who's on I see he's on our chat tonight. He must be loving England line moving. And then obviously the All Blacks come into play. Australia.
I love this. You get this back and forth between us where like you guys take over, we take over. I love the 90s. It was so tight.
It was awesome. And then that happened, which is terrible.
We've had a good run.
Jeepers, pulling away.
Yeah, we had.
But I mean, I've got to say, really cool I'm nervous about how it goes next year. You boys are looking good and we're having our troubles. So we'll see.
Dave, maybe on that note, I'll probably leave it to Jog to pick up again on the Raeburn, but just I actually think it's a nice topic since I've been saying I think at the moment you could see a lot of movement in that because to me it's like there isn't as just like one dominant side in World Rugby at the moment. I feel like anyone from 5 or 6 nations when they are playing at home have a decent shot at winning anyone on their day. And I mean, this past weekend we saw that Ireland took care of business and it wasn't even too close. It was a pretty dominant display from Ireland in that one. And when would you say something like that would happen? We saw Scotland beating the Aussies, and the Aussies beaten again twice, and probably have a tough time third in a row. So it's not going easy, and the Boks have a tough one against England. So and we know in our rugby championship it's a little bit of a you have one and we have one. So it could be a pretty. I don't see any team doing that same thing on the graph that we just saw, piling up a number of wins. I actually think it could be a little bit of one for you and one for me coming up.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I'm old enough to remember when the All Blacks weren't like this. We've always been successful, but the last 10 to 15 years have been remarkable. And actually, we've been totally spoiled. I mean, I remember 98 when we lost more than I would wish to admit. So, and I think we're back to that. And you're absolutely right. And you know what? For World Rugby, it is so much fun to know that you go into all of these games and it could go either way. It's actually, as much as I would love the All Blacks to stay dominant, for the sake of World Rugby, it's great to have this levelling off of things, And actually, it's interesting. The same thing's happening in the women's game, that the Black Ferns, who are dominant, have dropped off. Though I can't see anyone beating the England women's team anytime soon because they're remarkable.
Cappy's always
question.
Seeing as Dave's a Q and living in England for last week,
I think it's obvious he's still supporting the All Blacks, right?
Yeah. So I've got a problem because my son was born. I've got 3 children, but my son's the oldest one who's born here, and so keeps telling me that he's an England supporter. And it breaks my heart every time he does it. But he's a 7-year-old.
We actually can resonate with you regarding that. I mean, in South Africa, it's just a complete sin. And Andy Scrum 5 is going to hate me for saying that, but he's a good buddy and he knows how it works. And the rivalry is very strong. Dave, just another question. Will the Shield be counted when it's normal Rugby World Cup matches, or does it go out of play during a World Cup?
So every single match. So actually, that's the wonderful thing about the Shields is that they are, so long as it's a test match, then they're on the line in every single match. And actually, it's brilliant because come the Rugby World Cup, they always come together. So for instance, in the 2019 Rugby World Cup, you took that off of Japan, I think it was, and then took it through the World Cup final. And whoever won that World Cup final, which was you guys, congratulations, also took both of them. And actually, there's quite a nice synergy there that, you're like, you are world champions and you will be for the next 4 years. But that kind of like best title, that thread, you almost lost to the Wallabies, but you regained it because the Wallabies lost it to Scotland and you took it back again, So there's like that thread. So and I love the Rugby World Cup. So I don't think they don't compete. They complement each other. And so what this does is it brings that interest throughout that 4-year cycle. And it means you've got this thread running through the game that you can see. And when World Rugby do recognise it, and they will, it's just a matter of time. I'm a patient man. Then it really adds something to the game, you know. So and it gives us fans something to kind of talk about. It brings our interest into other matches that it might not otherwise be, you know. Because as I said earlier, there's a Scottish fan who's like, well, how do I make sure that I get a shot at it next year? As a Kiwi, I'm like, well, we haven't even had a chance since 2018. How do we make this happen? And so if you follow the Twitter, you might see me put together things that show where the Shield might go in the next 4 or 5 matches. And that's because I think half the fun is, how do I get it? You know.
Just one more question before we actually move on and chat a bit of rugby, because obviously you are a rugby fan, and I mean you're a Kiwi, so it's born and bred into you. But regarding the World Cups, have you actually? I mean, you've obviously done a hell of a lot of research. Just out of interest, something that when we were chatting about World Cup now, who has the winner of the World Cup actually been the team that had the Raeburn Skuld at that moment? So it actually,
every time.
would I be wrong in saying that whoever lifts the World Cup at the end of a tournament would ultimately be the holders of the Raeburn Skuld at that moment in time?
Yeah, so far that's happened in every World Cup. In 2019, it was very close. I think it was the Scotland-Japan game. There was a possibility, the Raeburn Skuld was on the line. It was a possibility the winner of that game wouldn't make it out of their group, in which case it wouldn't have happened because the Raeburn Skuld would have been stuck. But fortunately, it made it out of the group, and it has every other time. And I think it's going to be pretty unlikely that it doesn't make it out of the group because, you know, but so far it's always made it.
Well, that's awesome. I think that's more reason to get World Rugby, onto this and have them make it part of, you know, the final handover. Well, not necessarily the handover of the World Cup, but as a side on, you're not just the World Cup winners, but also the holders of the Raeburn Skuld, which will be so cool.
Imagine this weekend if Sia Khaleesi walked out with a Raeburn Skuld and popped it on the sideline on a stand before the match, walks out and puts it there, and all the teams know the next person to pick that up is the one who holds it. You know, and the theatre that would come with that, where you've got Sia carrying it out because it's their shield, they own it right now, but he puts it on the sideline, waiting for it to happen. You know, and then whoever gets to pick it up could be England, could be the Springboks, but the theatre that's involved with that'd be brilliant.
Dave, just in general, do you feel like the current trend that's happened where they've almost created a trophy, you know, for any inter test match, you know, it's like all of a sudden you just see on the game day, or you see afterwards someone's lifting a cup, you know, it's almost, you know, you've got something unique and something that does mean something rather than, you know, just something that gets created and all of a sudden between South Africa and Scotland there's something that, you know, there's almost been this cry and this need for listen, and I presume it's from World Rugby. We need to have something on the line to play for, you know, something to smile with the cameras. But at the same time, it's almost to your detriment that there are already trophies out there, and people are like, you know, why would we want another one? Where, as I said, it's almost, you know, unfortunate that you've actually got one that actually makes sense.
Yeah, do you know what? I love it. I love that there's other ones, because whenever fans hear about this concept, they go, oh, this is better than those made-up ones, because this isn't made up. It's tracking something real, you know? So I love it because it gives us, people then, like, understand the Raeburn Skuld, and they're like, boom, like, this makes sense. This is a thing. I want to keep this. Whereas, you know, the Freedom Cup or whatever it might be, it's brilliant. It's lovely. It doesn't mean anything particularly. It's not tracking a real thing. So actually, it's a good point, but I like it because it makes the Raeburn Skuld make more sense. Because people are like, oh, I can get behind that. As Rian, I hope I'm saying it right. As Rian says right there, you know, you get obsessed quick.
But
I must say, sorry, I just wanted to say, when I found out about the Raeburn Skuld, I mean, thanks to Andy, I'm giving him way too much airtime tonight. But, you know, he tagged me along with a whole bunch of other people a few months ago or so, if I remember correctly. And then you started following me back. I was a bit confused as to what is this. I mean, I didn't have a cooking clue what was going on, and but over time, you know, you the more you see it, the more, you know, obviously started having an interest in it. But I mean, after tonight, I can tell you now, this is actually this is something, you know, this is something to be excited about. You know, especially if you know that your team is in with a shot, or your team is like, you know, like the Boks, they're the current holders of it. And I mean, with this massive game coming up this weekend, you know, you almost, sometimes it feels like what's to play for. You know, it's just another test match. Now suddenly, when you're in the mix, you know, it's there's something to play for, even though it's not tangible. I see Quinton has been asking, you know, do you actually get to take it? What happens with the shield logistically? Does the wedding team physically keep it? Quinton tuned in a little bit late, so no. The Raeburn Skuld is a concept that's in the making, but it's been tracked since day one, since 1871, and I mean, you know, the homework's already been done, which is awesome.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of making it real now. And
one day, hopefully, it'll be big enough that I have to carry it around the world, watching games of rugby and making sure it's looked after. Wouldn't that be awful?
Man with a plan. That is awesome. And Dave, so if we can jump ahead now, or slightly bit backwards, this weekend obviously coming up will be the Boks playing England. But I mean, there's 3 games of note, I think, that we can talk about from this past weekend. Obviously, the Boks versus Scotland. I must be honest, as a Boks supporter, it wasn't the most exciting game that I got excited about, especially having to watch the Ireland New Zealand game afterwards. I mean, jeepers, that is by far the game of the weekend. You know, that we all watched. So I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the Boks. You know, Bok win is great. It was a hell of a tussle, but I think ultimately everybody knew that, you know, the Boks should pull this one through. What were your thoughts, if we can start with that game before we, you know, go on to the next two, the next 2 as in England, Australia? But I mean, and obviously thinking to this weekend's game, you know, what stood out for you from the Boks against Scotland that you think will, you know, count in good stead? I mean, I'm sure you also saw the team announced today.
Do you know, the Boks, they made me think of Thanos, like they were inevitable. You know, like it was like they just kind of had a plan. Like it was like that was the thing that was in my head. I was like, if I was a Scotland supporter, I'd be like, oh, I'm going all right with there, but they're just inevitable. They keep coming, you know, and actually I appreciated that, because actually pressure and grinding it is important in rugby. And people talk about styles of play and all that rubbish. Well, I appreciate a team who have a plan and they work to it and they implement it. I can only respect that, you know, and they actually have some remarkable talent in there to do. People talk about, I get a bit wound up with all the boring stuff, because actually they're pretty exciting when you look at what some of those players can do. And there was a couple of tries in there this weekend that were special. But, you know, I actually don't think you should underrate that win, because Scotland have been good recently. They've been a very good team. And, you know, that game that they had against the Wallabies, for instance, they were fantastic. And actually they were very good against you as well. The problem was you were better consistently and built that pressure, you know, and so that shouldn't be underplayed, because actually it was good. And I think from where I first kind of was watching the Springboks earlier in the season against the Wallabies at the start, and I was kind of worrying a bit about where their performance was, they've built back into it, you know, and I've been very impressed with the way they're coming together.
And well, Dave, of course, we want to talk to you about the Kiwi game. You know, it's not often that we talk to New Zealander just after they've lost a Test match. You know, it happens seldom. So we're going to have to more this one. I felt like the Irish hit you guys almost for South African game for a large majority of it. You know, it was a lot of momentum rugby, dominating the collisions, getting over the advantage line, and eventually the crack showed. You know, I thought they should have been up further earlier, you know, just not being able to cash in on the dominance, and then New Zealand doing what they do well. You know, they get one opportunity and they score a try, and I thought the score was probably a little bit closer than it should have been, because you guys are just great at finishing opportunity. But yeah, it was pretty dominant. And again, I think the one area that perhaps the New Zealanders have to worry about is when that forward pack just gets put on the back foot, how they cope with that.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I think also, like those miracle tries are amazing, aren't they? But sometimes they're also our downfall. So, like you think late in the game, the players make a break, and sometimes we've got remarkable individuals who can break the line, but they then get isolated. And so I am in two minds sometimes about how we need to play the game. And I worry slightly that when we make those breaks, we're often getting ourselves isolated, and that's when you get turned over. And so you either have the miracle of you make the break and you're able to connect and you're able to get the try, or you find yourself consistently breaking up the play. And I think one of the things we struggled with, I think it was something like 245 tackles we made over that game. Something like only 7 teams since they've been tracking it have made that many. There's been times where we've wanted teams to have the pill so that we can put them under pressure, isolate them, and hit them on the counter. That's too much. We can't let them have that much territory in possession. It's too much. And so, they've got some going away and some thinking to do. I'm really looking forward to the France game because I feel like that gives them, they show us whether they can turn that round. I hope they go back to basics, and I hope they earn the right to go wide. I want to see the team being fed on pure red meat this week. I want people to be angry, and I want to see them coming out and spending 20 minutes just smashing rucks, going in, supporting their mates, earning the right to break the French later in the game. We'll see. But, Ireland are very, very good at that game. Also, the TMO and all those kind of pieces, it's breaking up the game a little bit at the moment. And so the rhythm's really hard to find. And so that was notable for me over the weekend.
Listen, Dave, it sounds like you enjoy the South African way of doing things, that you want the New Zealanders to come up more physical and more charged up and more imposing. And you've got your England connection happening now that you're close to the stadium. So it sounds like you're a bit conflicted at the moment.
Well, I'd say I'm greedy. I want both, So I want my big, angry munters up the front. And I want to see them earn the right to send those fancy boys out. I'm running a bit smaller than I used to, but I was a tight head prop when I was younger. And I just believe you got to earn the right, like you've got to make sure that you get your set piece right. If you can't rely on that, then you've got nothing in the game because you'll keep breaking up your momentum every time it comes through. So no, I do. I appreciate, I say it over and over again, you've got to earn the right.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's like we just on the other side of that, we feel like we always earn the right, but then we almost never use that right to get some of our guys going out the back there. But we do 80% of the game heck of a well. Maybe the last one there, just England over Aussie, it was kind of expected given some of the players that were missing for Australia. But yeah, in the end, the score was pretty convincing. But I think England were in control of the game throughout.
Yeah, they were, weren't they? But they did score a try after the buzzer, if you like. Not that there is a buzzer, which I think pushed it out a bit more. I think it was, for the first 70 minutes they managed to compete. And actually, to give the Wallabies credit, they've lost some players who didn't go on the tour that they were expecting to have. They've had a few injuries come through, and actually they stayed right in that match. May not have been pretty at all times, but they stayed right in it. And because they were trying to push for the result at the end, they got punished and a try came through. I will be honest, I didn't get to watch that game as closely as I'd like to, but from what I could see, England still maintained control, and they're good at that. And I am excited to see the England Springbok game this weekend. It'll be fun, is what it will be.
Yeah, I was about to say, looking ahead to this game, I think a lot of us are excited. Whether we're excited or nervous, that's another question. But ultimately, we definitely all are excited because I think, it's the first time we're playing each other since, the World Cup final. Eddie has been pretty vocal about, wanting our scalp and, seeing it as winning the World Cup. And I don't know what.
Hey, well, he'll be winning the Raeburn Skuld, won't it? He just doesn't know it yet.
The only thing Eddie might win this weekend, if he does beat us, is the Raeburn Skuld. That's for sure. Nobody can dispute that. But, what is your... when we were chatting during the weekend, lining up this interview and stuff, you actually mentioned to me that you couldn't get tickets for this weekend's match. So, I mean, living 10 minutes away from Twickenham, that must be bleak.
Yeah. It's well, it's also the life of a family man. It's hard to find the excuse to go to all of them. But no, I have managed to get to this game, and it would be amazing. But Twickenham, I'll be honest, over here, Twickenham's a bit of a closed shop. If you're not part of the right crowd, it's very difficult to get tickets to these big games, and I am not part of that crowd. Because the English system, rugby is for everyone back in New Zealand. The English system is a little bit more elite, and I am just a simple Kiwi boy. So. But it's I am looking forward to it. I did actually manage during the 2015 World Cup. I was outside the ground talking about the Raeburn Skuld. I think I got into 6 games at Twickenham with people very kindly just giving me tickets because I was talking to them about the Shield, and they're like, "Mate, I've got a spare. Do you want to come in?" So I've done all right.
Well, maybe you should pop around this weekend if the wife is willing enough. I mean, just tell her this is a World Cup replay, biggest game of your life kind of thing, bar the All Blacks, obviously. Is your wife a Kiwi, by the way?
No, she's born and bred in Twickenham. So,
then she should
I think
be
that's part of the
backing you
divided
all the
house.
way. Just tell her that you will go support England, but I mean, deep down, we all know you're actually going to be more South Africa prone. Andy might be hating me, for saying that, but it's fine.
Well, to be fair, as I say, I could go either way.
Hey?
I'm happy for you boys to have the Shield, but I would love to see it in the Six Nations. So, I'm not going to blow smoke up here. I'm pretty easy either way at this point.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Okay, listen, Dave, what do you think about since you? I think it sounds like you're getting the same way as Cappy says. I am with the betting. I was always, it was always Sharks rugby first and Springboks first, but now it's wherever I've got money on second. So it looks like the Raeburn Skuld is starting to take precedent. It gets to whoever you think should be best to carry it forward and take it to some new people. That's who you're shouting home. But New Zealand and France, what are you expecting from that one this weekend?
God, to be honest, I'm a bit scared to think about it too deeply because losing 2 on the bounce would be bloody upsetting. I think they'll respond. Also, Aaron Smith has come back in camp, and I think that'll make a huge difference because his speed at the ruck allows us to get that quick ball and to allow that go forward to happen. And so I think he'll be quite fundamental, and I do think they'll start him because, Teja Perenara, he hasn't been the same player in the last kind of 18 months as he was. Japan's a great place to go to make some money, but sometimes it doesn't prepare you for certain styles of play. Same for us up front when you get the likes of Brody Redlick coming back, they have to build into it. Apparently hugely fit, but that's not always what you need if you're a second row. You want to be fit, but you need to be able to hit some people. So I do think Aaron Smith is actually the key, and I believe that he will allow us to have the fluidity in the back line to be able to get over the line. And so we'll get there, but I'm not confident about that.
Dave, can I hit you with a little bit of a personal one? We've obviously been touched by the award nominations and things like that, but I'm not going to go on to no Eben Etzebeth or Sia Kolisi like we would like. But on the coaches front, are you the All Blacks set a very high standard, and for Ian Foster to be nominated in a year that you lose 2 test matches, I don't know, it just sounds a bit strange to me. I don't know how you guys perceive it.
Do you know, worse for me is not the World Rugby thing. That's sort of irrelevant. It was that they gave him a 2-year extension to the World Cup before we'd even played any of our important competitors. So they extended him this year before the Rugby Championship. I mean, who cares about the games before that? We still had to play the Box. We still had to play the Wallabies. That's how we test ourselves. And we still hadn't come up to the Northern Hemisphere. They needed to see how he could respond to those kind of game plans. The Wallabies have improved, but against us, they're bunnies for us. We know we'll beat them because of the style of play, So don't reappoint the guy based on that. So I don't think World Rugby should have been recognising him in that way. I do think the award season, it's always weird at this time of year because they do all the voting before most of these autumn internationals. And actually, if you go, I think it's harsh on South Africa, but actually, if you go back and look at them losing 2 on the bounce to the Wallabies, it was very impressive to get up over the lines, but it wasn't what you'd call remarkable play. So I can see how they haven't, kind of been put up there in the awards pieces, but it's still bizarre to leave them out. Like Sia has been pretty damn good, like I would be very happy for that man to run out on our pitch. So it's weird, but I do also see like the timing is always weird for these awards because I don't think they would have voted having seen the last couple of matches. So, that's where it comes through. But yeah, Foster shouldn't be there. Not even convinced he should be coaching our team still. I'd like to see Razor given a go.
Well, I must say it might come back to bite us in what's it, 18 months time, or probably 2 years from now exactly time. But I must say, as a South African supporter and someone who wants to oppose the All Blacks on a betting front or whatever, it was music to my ears that he got that extension. I'll tell you that much. I'm pretty much it's not a bad thing, I don't think, from our side. Cappy, anything else from you?
No. I just want to say, I'm the longer they keep Foster in position, the happier I am. Sorry, Dave. I know it's not the words you want to hear from us, but I'm sure you understand.
I totally feel it. Yeah, no.
It just makes life, well, by the looks of it, it makes life a little bit easier. The last 20 or 15 or odd years has been quite tough, So, I mean, but I can also understand, it's actually, I know for me it might be a little bit funny, but I mean, I can understand, a supporter saying, losing 2 on the bounce is quite tough. Especially if you're used to a team that pretty much, it's almost a given that you win 99% of your matches, with the odd one here or there that might stick out. But I mean, the way things are going, it's a reality, but I think in a way for World Rugby, I'm not talking about the organization, it's a great thing, where things are just almost leveling out. It's like Scotland. I think Gregor Townsend is going to take the team to a level which they've never been before, and which is awesome, because I mean, you kind of always have this idea in your head that, okay, well, these are the whipping boys.
And Zondag, Cappy, Townsend with Zondag.
Well, I mean, it didn't make much of an impression yet, but let's see. All I'm saying is they are going to be contenders going forward with this management team that they've got, with the players they've got. I see some of the guys said, half the team is South Africans. Doesn't matter who plays. At the end of the day, it's as long as the game is good and it's positive and stuff. That's great. And I think it's not nice that there's just one team dominating the world. I think it's time. We've seen it over the years now with sevens where it's just narrowed down. Everybody is almost at the same level now. You can't, you don't just expect Fiji, or I mean, it was the New Zealand sevens used to dominate it actually more than anything else, and that just changed completely. I mean, nobody even really speaks about them, without being disrespectful or anything. But it just shows you how things are evening out, and seeing it at a 15-man level, that is, I think it's good for the game, and it's just going to force everybody to just be that much better. But I mean, I think from what we've learned, I mean, Dave, is there anything else you can tell us about the Raeburn Skuld that we don't know yet, that you haven't shared with us, that you might have forgotten?
I think the biggest thing is there's lots of different facts about it and things that come through, but the biggest thing is we need fans to support us on our journey to being recognised. So what I'd ask of people is to engage with the content that I put out onto the social media. So wherever people can retweet things, or they can like them, or they can share them, I wildly appreciate that, because actually all I want to do is enhance the game of rugby. I want to give us something else to get excited about. I want to make it so that teams have got something that means something on the line. And in order to do that, it's not going to be World Rugby that does it. It's going to be the fans. It's going to be the fans following it. It's going to be the players recognizing it. And I recognize that at the moment, it's a little bit like, there's not a real shield. But the more we talk about it, the more we follow it, the more it gets into everyone's consciousness. Actually, it'll come. I've been on this journey since 2008. I'm a very, very persistent, patient man. I'll be at it until 2028, or my son will take over when I'm, fallen over. So we will get there. But I would request any support that people can come. So if you can follow the Twitter account, great. If you can follow the Facebook account, great. If you can retweet and interact, that's the kind of thing that positively helps because it spreads the word. I don't care about World Rugby. I care about fans.
Well, Dave, you've definitely sold me tonight if I haven't been before. Like I said just now that I understand it much, much better, it's definitely something to get excited about as a fan. And as you say, the fans should be the guys driving this thing. And then somewhere along the line, World Rugby might actually agree with the fans for once in their lives and maybe consider taking it up. But yeah, jeepers. I mean, thanks for your time. It's very, very much appreciated. And yeah, before we go, I just want to please, guys, we're going to have our show on Thursday, which will be obviously our full-on preview show for the England-South Africa big one, the one to end of the year, especially for Boks supporters. And at the moment, I'm busy working on some super, super guests. And it might be another English one, believe it or not. 1 week of full-on English, the Losgemaal. Yeah, that is quite a shock.
In honor of facing the English.
In honor of facing the English. But yeah, I'm not going to say too much because, as always, I surprise my co-host, Hein, with some of our guests. And this one is definitely, hopefully, going to be a good surprise. But we'll find out sooner than later. So please tune in. But what I do want to say is, guys, you might have noticed over our social platforms that we are giving away some betting vouchers or free bets, as they would call it, thanks to bet.coza. And I want to ask you guys to start thinking about your predictions ahead of Thursday, and also keep an eye out on Twitter, where we'll also run a prediction thing, and we will be giving away more free bets this week than we did before. So if you want to stand in line to win it, the biggest secret of it all is you need to register an account with bet.coza. So start doing that and start thinking about your predictions for this weekend on the Springboks England game. And then we'll catch you all on Thursday for our preview show, where we'll then discuss all of this in detail. And yeah, so Dave, thank you once again for joining us. Hein, anything last from you?
No, I think I saw Brent. He shared a bet there. He said that the Springboks, Wales, and France. So he's going for the full treble. I'll share a little bet on Thursday. But the one bet that everyone should take is to get involved with Dave and the Shield there. I think that's it's a brilliant concept. And as you say, I mean, it's not foreign. We've known the lineal championship in boxing and everything like that. It's something. It's real. It already exists. You know, we've got our champion at this stage, so it's just about getting the Raeburn Skuld into physical being. But I agree with Dave. You know, World Rugby or not, I think we just need to keep sharing, keep making it public. And I actually think the idea of having a couple of players with that, a version of it is actually a good way to go. So I think me and Cappy will try and get involved there and try and find the South African rugby player who's going to pose with one for us. We're going to have to make our own 3D printer version, yeah. So, Dave, thanks so much. It's been awesome. It was great having you on the show, and thanks for everyone chatting along and supporting the scores as well. I'm sure we'll all get on board there. It's brilliant.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I've really, really enjoyed chatting to you. Really appreciate it.
It's only a pleasure. And you asked for any Afrikaans words. I think Hein has got...
Is that pronounced right?
You already picked up on Twitter. What a guy. What a guy. We'll get you on the show again, and by the time one of these days we'll have you saying a full string sentence of Afrikaans stuff, and we'll try and keep it clean. So yeah, anyway. Have a nice evening, gents, and see you all on Thursday. Stay safe.
En die komt daar weer een heel